you had much time to put any thought into this, and if you have, what are your thoughts on it? And if you haven't, we can move along. That's kind of up to you.
I can honestly say we might have to move along because I'm not 100% familiar with the story. I guess you could give me a quick summary of it, or whichever.
Well, basically what you had was a situation late night, 2:30 in the morning at some kind of restaurant or bar or something in Norman. You have a confrontation between a young African-American 18-year-old male who is a star on a football team arguing with some drunk female-type person who was so inebriated she didn't remember what happened. And the whole thing escalated to the point of her allegedly spitting in his face and throwing racial slurs at him, and him eventually punching her and breaking her nose, her cheekbone, and her sinuses. Right now, I guess this is all in the police's hands. They're doing their investigative work on it, and we'll hear the final verdict sometime down the road. But right now, Mixon has been suspended from all football activity in Oklahoma. Is this fair? Is this unfair? Is it too early to tell? What's your thoughts on the young man busting her face?
Honestly, in these situations, I look at them all the same way. I think it's absolutely fair to suspend him indefinitely, just as I felt it was absolutely fair to kick Dorial Green Beckham off the team, because I can understand. I mean, I've been in situations like this when a woman is so far gone, she doesn't even know what the hell she's doing, but nonetheless, you don't put your hands on a woman. I don't think there should ever be a point where that should be acceptable. Now, if investigations lead to the fact that that's not exactly what happened, then he should be put back on the team. And I wouldn't say, even if he did in fact do that, he shouldn't necessarily be kicked off the team if this was the first thing he's ever done remotely bad. I guess that would be my biggest thing. But I also wouldn't disagree if Bob Stoops said, take a hike and go find a new team to play for if after everything shook out.
Right. Well, no one on either side is denying the punch. I mean, it's kind of hard to deny a girl that's, gotten her face broken in 3 different places and multiple witnesses that saw it happen. So he definitely did punch her in the face. And I guess what's important to this case is what were the actions leading up to it. Me and Carter decided earlier that it doesn't, in our opinion, it doesn't really matter, what happened. You've got to be the bigger person and walk away. When you see a situation escalating like this one clearly was, you being a new representative of the University of Oklahoma, and more importantly of yourself, you've got to walk away from this. And, we'll have to wait and see what is determined and what the punishments are, but I guess we kind of have to put it in Bob Stoops' hands as the coach to make the right decision after the law is done with it.
Well, that's, I think, will be the most interesting part, because when coaches face situations like these is when I'm most interested to see who they are. You see who they are as people, in my opinion, in these situations, because, I think Gary Pinkel just showed how good of a man he is by throwing off the best player on his team, really the best player he's probably ever had at Missouri. That's the first thing he ever did. Now, it was warranted. What he did was wrong, and it should have gotten him kicked off. But I hate to say it, but there's some coaches in college football, even in this Bob Stoops situation, they don't throw that kid off the team. He just gets suspended for the Appalachian State game.
Well, ironically, didn't Green Beckham end up at Oklahoma?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good point.
That's, so, again, we'll just have to wait and see what kind of decision Stoops makes. We got those guys in the third game of the year, and with Stoops' recent, I don't know if you'd call it a rant or tirade or what about the SEC, a lot of Tennessee fans are worried that he might turn the screws on us and really make an example out of Tennessee when we roll into Norman for the third game this year. I'm not so much worried about that. It's going to be a tough enough challenge going down there anyway. This is something I hadn't mentioned to Carter even yet today, Jeremiah. I'm going to throw this one to both of you. And I must confess, I stole this idea from a local sports show in Knoxville, a a local TV show that I watch. I'll give them a little plug, the Sports Source. They brought up the question this weekend: is Tennessee more likely to start the season 5-0 or 0-5? So, Carter, I'll give it to you first, then we'll go to Jeremiah.
I hate to say it, Keith, but I think it's 0-5, man. The schedule, going to Oklahoma, got to go to Georgia, got to play Florida. I know you look at Utah, and Utah State's not a bad team. Let me say that, and they're going to give us a fight. But it's still, man, the schedule's too hard. 0-5.
Well, I know I've heard you mention that you think we're going to beat Georgia. So, I'm not real sure where they came up with 5-0 and 0-5. I guess just because of, the first two SEC games being Georgia and Florida coming right off the heels of Oklahoma. I don't know that either one of these will happen. I don't think this team will be either 5-0 or 0-5. But Jeremiah, what are your thoughts, and maybe explain why you think one or the other may or may not happen?
Well, kind of the same thing as Carter. I'm to the point now as a fan where I tend to be much more of a realist than a homer at times. I say that now, and hell, we'll get to the start of the season, and I'll be a homer again. But I'm going with 0-5 just because the strength of the schedule. I can't see us beating all three, Oklahoma, Florida, and Georgia. And so that's the main reason why. But just for the record, there's no way we go 0-5 because I'm not really, honestly, the least bit worried about Utah State or Arkansas State. And maybe that's a mistake, but I'm not.
Okay, I'm going to modify this question, and I threw that out there because that's what they came up with on the Sports Source. Now we're going to try it Vols Checkerboard country way. And I think this is probably a tougher question and a tougher situation to analyze and come up with an answer. Are we more likely to start the season 3-2 or 2-3? Carter, you're first.
2-3 or 3-2? I'm going to say 3-2. Actually, because I've done said it, and I'm going to say it again. I think we're going to beat Georgia. You know what? I know we're going to beat Georgia. I know what they've got. I know they've got Gurley, but I'm not sold on them. I think we're going to beat them, plain and simple.
So who are the two losses?
The two losses, Oklahoma and Florida.
Okay. Jeremiah?
I hate to, once again, be following Carter with the same answer, but I could very easily see and think 3-2, or I think 3-2 as well, just because I think Tennessee's going to sneak up and upset one team this year, and I think it's more likely to be Florida or Georgia of the SEC teams, although I don't want to say that either because, hell, I don't know if Tennessee will ever beat Florida just because of that mental block that seems to be there on this team. But, I mean, like Carter said, Georgia, even with Todd Gurley, Georgia's got question marks on the defensive line and the secondary and quarterback. I'm just not sold on that team at all, and I'm not really sold on Florida either because even with the talent they have on defense, they still have Jeff Driscoll at quarterback who's never proven to be consistently good or healthy. And he's learning a new offensive system for, I think, the third, or at least the second year in a row, maybe the third. And I honestly think Florida's a sinking ship and Muschamp's getting fired at the end of the season. So,
yeah,
I go with they beat one of those two.
My thoughts on Florida are well documented thus far. I think they're going to be not necessarily the surprise team out of the East, but I think they're going to be the team out of the East and probably out of the conference that makes the biggest turnaround this year. Just simply based on the fact that even though they were 4-8 last year, like Georgia, they had a world of injuries that pretty much just decimated those guys. And I think Driscoll's probably going to come back and have a better year than most people think this year. But hey, that's not the question. The question is 3-2 or 2-3. And I'm probably going to tend to be the more optimistic of us three, and I'm going to go with 3-2. Obviously, I think we're going to win those first two games, and quite handily. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, but I just think we've got so much more talent than Utah State and Arkansas State that they're just not going to be able to hang for 4 quarters. They might keep it close through the first half, maybe partway through the third quarter, but I think something will happen the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back will happen in the third quarter, and I think we run away with both of those games. So that means we got to get a win at Norman or at Athens or home against the Gators. And, Carter, I've teased our boy Oni Kuno relentlessly that we're going to come to Norman and get a win. And part of me still believes that. I've got to look at it realistically. I understand that. But I still think we can go out there and beat those guys. But right now, here on the last day of July, I'm not going to pinpoint a win out of those three. I'm just going to say we're going to get one of those three and start the season at 3-2, possibly 4-1. But like Jeremiah, let's wait till the season gets closer before we nail down predictions, because the closer we get, the more excited we get, and probably the more scatterbrained and ridiculous we get. So we'll have to see, when we get down there. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes left in the show, guys. I know you guys are both Titans fans. Anything you want to talk about out of NFL camps firing up this week with your Titans?
I got something if Carter doesn't want to go first.
Go ahead.
Basically, the Titans are going to win the Super Bowl. Nah, I'm kidding. I'm very encouraged. To be honest with you, I've made myself vocally clear to some of my friends that I'm more excited to see the Titans play than I have in quite some time, because for the first time in my life watching this team, I feel like they finally have a coach and people in charge that are less interested in filling the stands and more interested in winning games, which is something the Titans haven't done in a long time. But there's a new attitude amongst this team. They've got players all over the field who've played on, teams. We got a guy that, Bernard Pollard won a Super Bowl with Baltimore. Delaney Walker went to a Super Bowl with San Francisco, and Wesley Woodyard and Sean Phillips just left Denver after playing for a Super Bowl. And there's guys all over this team that are coming here saying, hey, I just competed for a Super Bowl there, and I have every intention of doing it here. So I feel like the team's headed in the right direction, and I believe Ken Wisenhunt's the right coach to do that, because I think he's a hell of an offensive mind.
I got to agree with Jeremiah. Absolutely.
Go ahead, Carter.
I got to agree with Jeremiah. I love what Ken Wisenhunt is all about. He stands for as a coach. This team, a lot of people worried about Locker and QB situation, which, rightfully so. The biggest thing for me is his health. Can he stay healthy? Because he's been getting banged up a lot. We saw last year. And I think Zach Mettenberger, it's just me, but I think he'll end up being the starter by the end of the season. That's my bold prediction for the Tennessee Titans. Mettenberger will start.
I'll say I got one more bold prediction. I forgot to touch on Locker. My bold prediction is Locker plays 16 games this year, because Wisenhunt's system is all about keeping you in the pocket, quick step, quick pass. No stupid fluky shit that's going to get Jake Locker hurt like he did last year under Dow Logan's system. My bold prediction is Locker plays 16 games, and every writer on ESPN and every other major site has to bow down to him, because all they want to do is talk about how Locker can't cut it as a quarterback when we make the playoffs.
I guess that's something we'll all find out pretty soon. As far as my NFL team, the Arizona Cardinals, I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. Everyone knows that we're going to go 19-0 this year and win the Super Bowl. Carson Palmer will break every Peyton Manning record ever set. Let's see, that our fantastic running game will rush for over 3,000 yards this year. We'll pass for over 6,000. And it's just going to be an incredible year in the desert. Yeah, we'll talk more about our favorite teams as the NFL season draws nearer. I mentioned earlier that we will talk high school football to some degree every week. We've got every corner of this state covered. Myself out here in East Tennessee, Jeremiah is going to hold it down in Middle Tennessee, and, of course, Carter, who will take care of things out there in West Tennessee, as we all three have a favorite team or an alma mater in each part of the state. And, of course, everybody knows I'm a Greenville fan. I'll take care of them and everybody up here. Carter will handle the Milan Bulldogs and all those teams out west in the other part of the state that most of us don't even like to call part of the state anyway.
Oh.
Of course, Jeremiah. Who's your team, Jeremiah?
Patriots.
The Page
And
Patriots.
a little 4A school nobody